All right, it's been a full week since we did a mock draft. It's about time, right? And as you guys know on the channel, we always try to do some things that make you think a little bit differently. Take a different angle, take a different approach. What we've got sitting for us is about $60 million in spendable cap and free agency, and that is going to determine everything as to where we go with the draft. What happens in free agency will affect what happens in the draft. I think that's a given. Everyone knows that. But then you watch the Super Bowl, and you start to think, man, these Eagles did some things that really helped them to win that Super Bowl. Now, obviously, they're in a whole different spot than the Chicago Bears. I get that. They're way down the road on this, but they have some implications that come with that as well. But when you look at some of the moves they made, Milton Williams being a rookie, the last year of his rookie contract really helped out that situation. Josh Sweat, as a premier defensive end in the Super Bowl, really should have been the MVP of the Super Bowl, in my opinion. Maybe you don't agree with that, but I think really there were so many good players on defense that they said, we can't decide which one we're going to give the MVP to, so let's go ahead and give it to Jalen Hurts. So default, give it to the quarterback. I think Josh Sweat should have been the MVP. $10 million last year. $10 million. All right, so Milton Williams, Josh Sweat. Then you got Zach Bond. Man, Zach Bond, defensive on the linebacker, outside linebacker. $3 million contract. $3 million contract. He started off with the Saints and came over on a prove-it deal. Got me thinking a lot, and I've been mentioning this in a lot of my videos lately. I don't know if the move to go for the Bears right now is to hit that home run $22, $23, $24 million contract to go sign Josh Sweat to a $24 million contract. We already got one defensive end under contract. To go sign Milton Williams to a $20 million a year contract. To go sign Trey Smith to $22, $23 million a year. Is that really the move to make when we are not one clear move away from making it to the Super Bowl? I don't know. I think the Bears might need to take this approach that the Eagles had in filling in some of their gaps. And it takes a lot of luck to really hit those things. It does. It takes good GMs. Obviously, the Eagles have got some things going on there that are working out for them. But it takes some luck, but it takes a lot of preparation. But hitting those giant contracts right now, when we have extended a couple of those already. And I'm not saying we're in bad cap space. Not saying that at all. Don't take me wrong here. But we've extended Jalen Johnson. We've extended DJ Moore. We've extended Montez Sweat. Some of those contracts are stacking up, and then you got some of them that need to kind of figure out this year, make or break year, are they good contracts or not? Tremaine Edmonds doesn't look like a good contract so far. We'll know after this year, because if he doesn't live up to his contract this year, he's definitely not going to be continuing forward with the Bears. Too much money invested into him, so there's things that can be done to move him after this year. Interesting spot for the Bears to be in. So I'm going to take a different path on this one, and I'm going to go, same path as last time, but I'm going to give you guys some more options of those players that would be those lower to mid-level contracts and what it can do. And then number two, we're not going to use all that salary cap up because as we know, players like Kyler Gordon can be extended, and that could use some of that money up. But also, if the Bears hit this year, if they start off strong, let's say they start off 6-2 before the trade deadline, and they're one clear piece away, and you feel them just turning the corner, new coaching staff, second-year quarterback, receiving core, the line is gelled together, the defense looks revamped, and this is one piece away, having that salary cap reserved could make a huge deal when it comes time to the trade deadline. If you are that move away, there's things you can do to shuffle the salary cap. I get it. But we've seen Ryan Poles likes to use a little buffer cap there for that reason. They could trade away some future, a second rounder, third rounder next year to go after that one player that could push us over the edge. This is very forward thinking. But let's roll right into this thing and show you what I'm talking about. So here's some of the main positional needs that we have going into this next year. And if those who haven't seen, Ian Cunningham is interviewing on Friday for the Jaguars GM position. He sounds like he's the front runner. We'll see if he ends up being that the candidate who gets picked. But as we stand right now, I had to pause it there for a second to bring on the bear down pointer, the logo. He was off board. I didn't even notice. Sorry about that. As it stands right now, we have 10, 39, 41, 72. With that draft pick, with the comp pick, it would be right around 99. It would jump right ahead of the 49ers. That's where we'd stand. So we have 16 needs, 8 and 8. 8 starters, 8 backups. Here's the salary cap as it stands right now going into next year. Now, you'll see things that look different than this because the adjusted cap, the future reserve contracts are all calculated in there. This is what I went over on the main video. This is where we stand. These draft picks will account for about $14 million. The practice squad will account for about $4 million. We got about $60 million spendable. We're going to go out and purchase some of these mid-level contracts, some high-potential players, some players that may not be on your radar right now. We're going to hit those in this video, and we're going to leave a buffer cap there in case mid-season there's one guy, there's one person we're right away from making a push. So to start it off in a little different format, let's fill in some of these needs with some of the current rosters, some players that I really think we have a shot of re-signing. Restricted free agent Jack Sanborn will probably be roughly around $4 million. If someone offers him a deal, we'll match it around there. So $4 million for Jack Sanborn. Bill Murray will be a exclusive right free agent. Sign him at $1.03 million. Coleman Shelton should be somewhere around $5 to $5.5 million for a backup center. In a position we've had such a need for depth. One of the top 10, 11, 12 centers in the league last year. Maybe he'll want to go somewhere else. Maybe he won't want to re-sign with the Bears. But if he's got a shot to start here and we know we're going to draft a center, develop, not going after the number one. I've got too much fear, guys, of last year. Lloyd Cushenberry was the number one. He signed the biggest contract for a center, $12.5 million a year, and then he laid a freaking egg. I'm not going to do that with Dalton. I'm not going to do that with Atlanta's center. And, man, the possibility of him with his poor pass pro and not setting a base and having his issues defending or protecting his quarterback, not doing that. I'm going to go with the proven that we have here, Coleman Shelton, to compete with the center that we draft in the draft. Josh Blackwell, Jalen Jones, they are exclusive right free agents. Oh, no, they're restricted free agents. Both of them are restricted free agents. Probably $1 million, $2 million contracts. We'll match those. And then Matt Pryor, probably going to be somewhere around $3-ish million. That's cheap for a really quality backup guard, which is what he was supposed to be this year. So we're going to retain him as a backup. He has a chance to compete as well. Maybe he wants to test the market and see if he can go out and be a starter somewhere as well. Go do that. There's so many possibilities. I think he would be happy to stay here and compete as well. He's got repertoire with this team, so we'd see what happens there. All right, let's jump right into this free agent class. We got $60 million to spend. This is going to be our biggest one. Kevin Zeitler. Some people are complaining about his age because he's going to be 35 coming into next year. Look at his production. He doesn't miss any time. He's a freaking Iron Man. All these snaps, 1,000. Doesn't miss time. So I don't care about his age. If he's an Iron Man and he hasn't missed time, I'd rather have that over Tevin Jenkins or all these other guys, even freaking Drew Dahlman, man. He missed time last year with an ankle injury. Not same position, but I get it. Kevin Zeitler, I'm done with the talk of that. He's gone from team to team, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Giants, Baltimore, Detroit now. Maybe he'll want to re-sign there, but there's got to be some repertoire right there with Ben Johnson having been in Detroit. Ben Johnson knows what he sees in him. They've now updated him to be paid more. So those of you saying he got paid $6 million last year, look at his season last year. Phenomenal season. Phenomenal. 32 plays between pass blocking plays between a pressure allowed. And 31 the year before that, 35 the year before that, 45 the year before that. So he's been an Iron Man, and he's been very consistent on the offensive line. We're going to sign him for $9.2 million. We're going to do exactly what Spotrac says his market value is. We're going to do that for all these guys. Next, Hassan Reddick. Obviously, the debacle that happened there with the Jets and everything that happened with him not playing, his numbers went down, only 3 sacks this last year, compared to 13 the year before, 18 the year before, 15 the year before, 13 the year before, and obviously less snaps played because of everything that happened. He's going to be looking to have a 1-year prove-it deal somewhere. Why not with the Bears? Why not a similar situation to what the Eagles got out of Josh Sweat? I'm not saying the exact same scenario. Don't take it for that. But a value contract on a very good player is what I'm saying. So Hassan Reddick, value contract. Let's see if he can help us make a push. Prove himself. Hey, if he earns that contract with us, hey, then we'll re-sign him. Great. I love it. We've got the salary cap next year as we're doing a lot of these 1-year prove-it type of contracts. I'm all down for that. All right, next up, we're going to move to Dre Greenlaw. Linebacker with the Niners. Sounds like from all accounts he's moving on. $6.7 million is a very value contract for his abilities. Now, he is coming off the major injury. He came off the gruesome ankles Achilles. He came off the Achilles injury and then had a calf injury at the end of the year. Maybe we can sign him for more value than this, but I know he's not going to be complacent with holding stills, holding pat. Been a very good linebacker his whole career. Sign him, bring him in, compete with Tremaine Edmonds, compete with Jack Sanborn, compete and be a part of this process. If he has a huge year like Zach Bond, then we just got a steal for $6.7 million. All right, next up, we're going to go with Poona Ford. For some reason, Poona Ford always outplays his contract, always does a phenomenal job, and still isn't getting all the respect in the world. So 2018 free, maybe it's because he was an undrafted free agent. I don't know. But he has played very, very well over his career. Yes, at Buffalo it was a little bit down, a little lower of a season. Kind of got the shaft in Buffalo, different situation. He, as I was looking it up, he called it a shaky situation in his words. He was listed on the non-active list for like 7 straight weeks despite no injury, even though he played very well. So not the huge sack numbers that you want to see, but always a lot of decent pressures and a very good tackler wherever he's been, whether it's Seattle, Buffalo, and then last year with the Chargers making his resurgence again. Maybe he'll make more than this, but it seems like everyone has a consensus he'll be right around that $6.7 million, $6 million range. So Poona Ford, great to shore up that defensive interior. We need a lot of help with that as well. All right, next up, we're going to go with Morgan Moses, who's hitting the tail end of his career. And yes, there was a little dip off last year, but we're not asking him to start. I don't think he's going to get a starting job this next year. Maybe I'm wrong. They say he'll make around $2 million. I think you can push that up and give him about 3.5. So yes, I said we would keep it at what Spotrac said, but I think it's unrealistic with his experience and how good he's been. He can come in, sit behind Darnell Wright, give him some of his expertise. Darnell Wright coming into his 3rd year, give some of that expertise as a veteran. Not a lot of pressures allowed last year. In fact, not a lot of pressures over his career. A couple seasons here where he gave up a little bit more. But he's been a very solid tackle, right tackle most of the time. But he could swing. He could be a swing tackle for us. Give us options on the offensive line to have some depth, which is what we were majorly lacking. All right, next up, we're going to go with Rondale Moore, who obviously had the injury as well. Did not play all of 2024 at all. So he was part of the trade from Arizona to be able to get he came across to the Falcons. And, man, who was the quarterback that went to – guys, I'm sorry. I have all this in my head. I have it all ready. I've prepared, and then I forget who it was. Anyways, not important. He's part of the trade. And then in the preseason, in the joint practice with the Dolphins, Rondale Moore had a knee injury. He was out for the entire season. So he's going to look to bounce back and prove himself somewhere. They're saying $1.5 million is probably what he's worth. I'm going to say we're going to pay him $2.5 million. He'd be a great wide receiver 3. Fit perfectly. I did this in another video showing him fit perfectly with Ben Johnson's offense. If you see over here on his RAS score, he's smaller, so that's why he only has a little bit smaller, but 9.3 overall score is really good still for all those reds there. For just his size is the only thing. That speed, 4.32 speed. Speed kills, and we know Ben Johnson likes his speed. I am not shocked at all if they do target Rondale Moore, and I'd love to see the Bears do it. Bring him in as wide receiver 3. Show him that he has a good spot and a good fit here with the Bears. That would be fun to see. High character from everything you read on him. High integrity type of player, so he'd fit well with the McCaskies as well. So going mid-level free agency, look at all the holes we were able to fill before we even hit the draft. Now we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we didn't even eat up all the salary cap. I'll get to the salary cap in a minute, but we filled in Kevin Zeitler, one of our starters, Hassan Reddick, one of our starters to defensive end. Jack Sanborn was retained as our linebacker, and we also have Dre Greenlaw to compete with him. Morgan Moses is a quality rotational. You could put Rondale Moore up here as well. I still think we're going to be targeting someone in the draft, but you could put Rondale Moore up there as a wide receiver 3, and then, our 5th wide receiver down here. And then I added a couple more over here. We didn't even have his key needs. So we've added even more pieces and not having to spend a ton of money. As embarrassing as it is, I'm kind of falling in love with this concept. I'm falling in love with the idea of these mid-level players that you convince to buy in to go on their prove-it deals with the Bears, come over and help this team out. I'm kind of sold on this. So with the moves we made, it gives us some flexibility now as we head to the draft to make some of these moves, okay? And the big moves we're going to make is we're going to get rid of DeMarcus Walker and Zach Pickens. Signing Hassan Reddick and the defensive end class that's here and filling most of those needs gives us that flexibility to hit high and say, okay, now we can hit defensive end in this draft. Whether first, second, or third round, we have the opportunity to pick one, and we've replaced DeMarcus Walker with Hassan Reddick. Same with Zach Pickens, replacing Poona Ford there. We can still go after a nose tackle or a 3-tech in this draft and get rid of Zach Pickens, trade him away. So we're going to trade both these guys away like I've been doing in many of my mock drafts lately. Both of them for 6-round picks. We're going to try to be realistic for what we could really get for them. We're going to pick up some 6-round picks for both of these guys, okay? Ryan Bates, somebody asked this question in one of the comment threads earlier. When would the Bears decide on Ryan Bates, whether they're keeping him or cutting him? I kind of feel like Ryan Poles is probably going to keep Ryan Bates because he's not that expensive an option, but the injury history is so concerning. The best ability is availability. That deadline would be 3/14. Unless Ryan Poles likes wasting money and throwing $500,000 away, that's a roster bonus that Ryan Bates gets on March 14th. So I would expect that decision to be made by March 14th. Free agency begins, remember, March 10th, and officially the new league year when the contracts will be signed March 12th. So it's 2 days after that we would see what was happening with Ryan Bates. Now, re-signings we're doing, Coleman Shelton, Bill Murray, Jack Sanborn, Josh Blackwell, Jalen Jones, and Matt Pryor. Those are going to cost us $17,530,000. Okay? Free agency, we picked up Kevin Zeitler, Morgan Moses, Hassan Reddick, Poona Ford, Rondale Moore, and Drake Greenlaw. That's only costing us, even with me bumping up a couple of those from what Spotrac said, $40 million. So we spent 57, but we're going to save another 10 here with these trades and cuts. Now, this is just saving back. There is some dead cap with some of those, but having the trade happen gives us some of that money back as well. They're off our roster. So with that, we are now sitting at $13,059,000. That gives us flexibility. That gives us the ability to extend Kyler Murray. That gives us the ability at the trade deadline to go make a move. Because it's not just what you're giving up at that trade deadline. It's not just, giving up a second rounder for a prospect that you want to trade for and extend. It's the money that goes into the rest of the year's contract, too. You got to pay the other half of that year's contract that they're still owed. You're going to have them on the roster. So we're going to go with a little slush fund here by picking up these mid-level contracts, not signing your Trey Smiths, not signing your Josh Sweats, not signing those big contracts, not re-signing Keenan Allen, going for Rondale Moore instead. I'm honestly in love with this. Let me know if you guys like this approach in the comments. Then we're going to get into the actual draft here. With all this in place, we've set ourselves up to not have as many dire needs as we head to the draft. With that, you guys know I've fallen in love with the trade down scenario because of how many needs the Bears have. But not only that, with where the Bears are picking, which players would be most available and most helpful to them. Now, I put a poll out on the channel. The overwhelming majority of you guys want the trade down from 118. This is a very fair trade and one that could be very realistic, as the Seahawks need to trade up for their offensive line, the tackle position specifically. And you might be saying, well, Adam, the Bears need offensive line too. Well, your centers and your guards typically don't go at the very top of the draft. So those guys that these teams deem will be a tackle, a left tackle, a right tackle, would go near the top of the draft, whether that's Will Campbell, Kelvin Banks, whoever, Josh Simmons, whoever it is. The Bears don't need to reach for a tackle. We've got Braxton Jones. I think people are starting to come around and realize that too, especially on Twitter and some of the other places. People are starting to realize that. So the Bears don't have that dire need for left tackle. Seahawks really need to fix their bookends. So they're going to trade up with us. We're going to give them 110 and 372. They're going to give us 118, a second rounder, and it's basically a swap for the third rounders to equal out the value here. So they are overpaying just a tiny bit, but this is a very realistic trade that could happen on draft day. I know we don't want to give up 372. Everyone wants 118, 250, and 382. They want the huge overpay like when you saw us come up for Justin Fields. It's not a quarterback situation. If it's a quarterback situation, you usually have a majority, like a way overwhelming overpay. That's not the scenario. So the Bears are going to pick up 118. We're going to pick up another second rounder, and we're going to pick up a swap for the third rounder. So we're going to pick a little bit later. with that, this is our draft order that we would now be picking in, updated with the 6-rounders as well. So we got 118 through 239, 241, 250, 382, 399 for Cunningham, 149, 187 for trading the Seahawks, Zach Pickens, 190 for trading the Cowboys, DeMarcus Walker, reuniting with Matt Eberflus, 197 for the Steelers, 235 for the Bengals, and 242 for the Vikings pick. That was a swap, 6-for-7 swap for Byron Cowart. It was for Williams at the end of the year, Chris Williams. So with that, Bears are on the clock, 118. We're going to take Walter Nolan, who's become one of my absolute favorite players in this draft. He is just like Mason Graham, but a little bit smaller, high motor. We're going to fill that nose tackle, defensive tackle position with Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss, 118. Now, this is where it gets a little bit fun for me. We're going to trade back up into the first round. This is a fun concept for me right here, with the Bears having a little extra ammo from trading some of those players away, from having where we stand with those needs filled with some of those value contracts. We don't need quite as many needs filled. There's a good opportunity to jump right back into the first round in this draft. And if it's someone like Kansas City who wants to rebuild a little bit, you can see them trading back a little bit for a couple extra pieces. We picked up the 99th overall pick from having Ian Cunningham go to Jaguars. We picked up a couple extra ones from trading away Zach Pickens and DeMarcus Walker. And now the Chiefs are willing to deal with us. We overpaid just slightly, just like the other one. Very fair value. We come up 8 spots. We're going to give away our comp pick. I know it's valuable. A lot of you want it. But there's a lot of players right there at the end of the first round. And one that I highlighted last night, yesterday in the video, I really think the Bears would have a good shot to have him be a cornerstone piece. And that 5th-year option is only available for first-round players. So the Bears are going to trade back up into the first round. And with that, they'll take Ariante Ursery, offensive tackle out of Minnesota. Now, as I explained on yesterday's video, he is more of a guard, and he could be a Trey Smith. Now, he could play both. He could play guard. He could play tackle. But he's got that comp right there that's to Trey Smith. Very similar style. 34-inch arms. So most teams are going to want to move him into guard, and his hands are smaller. His only big disadvantage, if you haven't seen that video, go check it out. I just put it out about Ariante Ursery. His only big disadvantage is against some of the speed rushers on the edge. He has a hard time catching up with them. He has good lateral agility, but he just struggles a little bit with that. Move him into guard. Let him develop there with Braxton Jones on his last year of his contract, and you've got a player that should be day one a dominant player on the inside because he's got a really strong base, 339 pounds. They've got him listed here at 330. But he weighed in at the Senior Bowl at 339. His draft stock is rising, and if he's sitting there at the end of the first round, I am all in favor of the Bears trading up, going for him at the end of the first round, because then you have that 5th-year option available as well. And we've got the draft capital. Having filled many of those needs, we've got the draft capital to be able to move up and to pick someone. You're not giving away the haul. You're just giving away a comp pick at the end of the 3rd round and a later round pick as well. With 241, we're going to take Landon Jackson. You guys know I'm high on him. Plays really, really strong. Just a high motor. He would be great to rotate in with Hassan Reddick and Montez Sweat, Austin Booker. That would be a great tandem for me. I would love to see that. Now, we picked up the extra 2nd rounder in our trade down. Our trade down was way more valuable than our trade up. So with that, Caleb Johnson is becoming one of my favorite running backs, and one that's kind of getting overshadowed because these Ohio State running backs are being talked about so high. Eddie George and that conversation talked about the Bears potentially targeting them. Well, if Junkins and Henderson are both off the board, and you've got Marion Hampton off the board and Ashton Genty off the board, sitting here at the end of the 2nd round, Caleb Johnson could be sitting there for the Bears. This is right where I see him going, and he's a powerful back who doesn't give up on other areas as well. He's got a strong center of balance. He breaks tackles. He's a really good receiving back as well, and he's big. So bringing him in as a 1-2 combo with DeAndre Swift, with Roschon Johnson. We got the Johnson & Johnson brothers now. With Ian Wheeler, I think the Bears have made it clear that they're probably going to be, targeting a quarterback or a running back at some point in this draft. Caleb Johnson would be a highlight for me if we picked him up with this extra 2nd-round pick. All right, now with our 3rd-round pick, remember, we pick swapped. So we moved from 72 to 82. I don't understand how a lot of people don't have Jared Wilson higher on their draft boards. But Jared Wilson, to me, is still one of the premier centers in this draft class. He's played very well, but he only played for one season. So some people are moving players like Gray Zabel up their board because of how he did at the Senior Bowl. Or Jared Wilson didn't go to the Senior Bowl, but he played against SEC competition, only gave up 5 pressures all year. Now it's his only year of starting, so that's the one knock against him. He was behind Cedric Bonpont Granger before that, but look at how well he's done, and he did it against SEC competition. He's very strong against his base is strong. He's over 300 pounds, 6'3", 310 pounds, so he's not a light center, and he's got super strong awareness. He can call out the plays. He's just got to get a little more experience. A perfect scenario to him to come in behind someone like Coleman Shelton and even potentially take over day one. I prefer Jared Wilson over Gray Zabel or almost any center in this draft class. But Gray Zabel hasn't played center before. So obviously he's getting reps at the Senior Bowl. I get both opinions on the subject, but Jared Wilson's still my number one. If he's sitting there around 382, I'm going to go ahead and take him. So Jared Wilson's my pick for center, and I hope the Bears somehow land him and make it happen. And there could be several players that fill into that mold like Gray Zabel that move from tackle to center in this draft. Check out my video on that if you haven't seen it. I can link it in the comments. But 5th round pick, we're going to take Pat Bryant. Now, he very easily could go ahead of this, but in many of the mock drafts I'm doing, Pat Bryant is available out of Illinois, and he's got great body control, and he would be a great option for a wide receiver 3 as well. So he could do it all. He can be a slot receiver. He can be an outside X receiver. He's really good at contested catches and no drops. With our first 6th round pick, we're going to take Mitchell Evans to shore up that tight end position. 6'1", 187 overall. Good developmental tight end in my opinion. Now, he doesn't have all the experience in the world, but he had a very good year this last year. He's good size, 6'5", 260 pounds, and I think he could learn really well behind Gerald Everett and Cole Kmet. Now, I know a lot of you aren't on board with keeping Gerald Everett. I've made mention of it before. You look at Gerald Everett this year, and you look at how he did the years before that and the scheming and the play calling, you can blame it on him. You can blame it on a lot of different things, but for how cheap his contract is, it's going to be expensive to replace him, and I think they're going to see the value in keeping Everett for at least this next year. Bringing in Mitchell Evans would be a good option to learn at tight end 3 behind them. Okay, now let me point this out, okay? So we've got our top 7 picks, and we even traded up into the first round. And because we went with all these mid-level free agents, Hassan Reddick, Kevin Zeitler, Morgan Moses, Rondell Moore, Dre Greenlaw, because we went with all those guys and we still have buffer cap, we had enough that we filled every one of our needs with 3 picks left. That's the advantage that this gives to the Bears. They have so much flexibility to take best player available, to move around in the draft, to move up into the first, not have to have that 99th overall pick. If they don't move up there, they could still move up from the 5th round into the 4th round and trade away some of those later draft capital, the 6th, 7th round picks. You can use those to be able to trade up. So we've used that on Walter Nolan, our defensive tackle, Ariante Ursary, left guard, Landon Jackson, defensive end, Caleb Johnson, running back, Jared Wilson, center, Pat Bryant, wide receiver, and Mitchell Evans, tight end. We filled all these important needs, starters and backup. Now what that leaves you is these last picks. The 6th rounder we got from the Steelers for Justin Fields. The 7th rounder we got for Herbert. The 7th rounder we got as a pick swap from our own 6th rounder into the 7th round for Chris Williams. We swapped our 6th for their 7th, which wasn't the Vikings, but that's the pick that we got from them. I know that's confusing, but that's the correct pick, guys. We now can use these on best player available there to fill our needs with a player that we can just use basically as an undrafted free agent, but higher prospect, to come in and compete at camp and try to take someone's roster spot. Maybe they compete and beat out Bill Murray, and then he goes to the practice squad. Maybe they compete and beat out Coleman Shelton, for all we know, or Jalen Jones at cornerback. So this gives flexibility, and I love this approach, and I really think this is something the Bears could pull off and do. So with that, I just highlighted 3 guys. I actually used the database to be able to pick this. 3 guys that are right in these same spots for the Bears. I won't go into individual ones for each one of them, but you guys know I love Jackson Woodard. Linebacker gives us more depth at the linebacker position. You're going to carry 6 linebackers on most teams anyways. Maybe Noah Sewell gets cut after this. Maybe we trade him after this. There's scenarios where they can. Now, that's something I haven't thought too deeply about up to this point. But Ben Johnson, he's not on the defense, but he was with the Lions, and they have Penei Sewell, Noah Sewell's brother. Maybe he likes that connection. Maybe he'll use Noah Sewell a little bit different. We'll see. Then you got Efton Chisholm, who really shined at the East-West Shrine Bowl. And then you have Addison West, who I think is a really solid small school developmental player who could be a great center as well. So same type of situation as some of those other guys. Some of these guys could rise the boards, we'll see. But these are good developmental players. I like every one of these for the role they could bring for the Bears. So I picked these 3 with my late-round flyers. This is what you want as developmental guys that could potentially turn into something. Now remember, this is just our final roster areas. This does not include, your practice squad, your 90-man roster. This does not include all that. But as you roll through here, this is really a good core offensive line that you can develop and build. I know a lot of you don't want to see Karan Amagaji there, but what you've got is a situation where you could have Ariante Ursary kick over if something happens to Braxton Jones. Morgan Moses could be the swing tackle, kick over if something happens, but he's very experienced at right tackle, so he can fill in for Darnell Wright if something happens. Matt Pryor has also played tackle and guard extensively, so it gives options there. You've got several guys who can fill in at the center position. Coleman Shelton was our starter last year. You got Jared Wilson, who would most likely, in my opinion, as the rookie, come in and start. You're going to build him off fresh and right. He's got a good base. He's bigger than Coleman Shelton, so you can rely on Coleman Shelton to be a very quality backup. And maybe he wants to get traded midseason. Maybe we use him as trade bait. Who knows? Addison West could fill in there at center as well. You got Bill Murray, Addison West with guard potential. There's just so many options here with this offensive line. And then you see the orange-looking color there. Those are the ones that will expire after this year. Really, these 2 guys down here, Matt Pryor and Braxton Jones. That's it. So these guys are all going to be built, unless you did Morgan Moses to a 1-year deal, then that's it, or Kevin Zeitler to a 1-year deal. Then they would be as well. But there's some good options for growing brick by brick, for building this the way that the Bears want to long term. All right, as we move over to the quarterbacks and running back position, adding Caleb Johnson really solidifies this running back room for me. I like this running back room a lot more than years prior. And then at the wide receiver position, tight end positions, I actually like this a lot. You got DJ Moore, Rondale Moore, so the more and more, Romo Dunze, Tyler Scott, who knows how he's going to be used this year, Efton Chisholm, and Pat Bryant. And I really, really, really like this wide receiver room. I would like that a lot. A lot of balance between your superstars, your up-and-comers, and then some speed as well. You got some speed with some of these guys. And then tight end room, Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett, both going to want to prove themselves. Mitchell Evans to learn and develop. Tight ends typically take a little longer to develop than other positions in the league. Defensive line, maybe we don't trade one of those guys. Maybe we don't trade Zach Pickens and they want to keep working with him for a year. Maybe they retain Jonathan Ford as depth piece here. Who knows what will happen, but I like the lineup here. Montez Sweat, Jervon Dexter, Walter Nolan, Hassan Reddick, Landon Jackson learning behind. Still Austin Booker continuing to learn. Poona Ford, and then Andrew Billings as well with Dominic Robinson, good size. They can fill in multiple roles there. I like that defensive line a lot, and I think it would be very formidable. It would be a Eagles type of line from last year, so I like it a lot. Linebackers, nickelbacks, you got Josh Blackwell getting retained behind Kyler Gordon. Probably extend Kyler Gordon here. You got Jack Sanborn being retained, but then you also side Dre Greenlaw, who would rotate in quite a bit, and I would expect potentially could take over here for Tremaine Edmonds. We'll see. And then Jackson Woodard, who was the Mountain West Conference Defensive Player of the Year and is always having big years. He hits so hard. You guys will love him if you look into him. Really good prospect. And then the cornerback position, safeties, nothing changes there. I know we probably need to solidify. We can take one in, an undrafted free agency. We can take one for cheap somewhere else, but we can solidify this in other ways. But Jalen Jones is the one that we retained there. So I like it a lot. I really like this draft and what it provides. As I scroll through here again, just going back position by position, let me know what you guys think. I'm high on Walter Nolan. In fact, he might not last till 118, But I think I'm really higher on him than most. But if the Bears take him, I think you guys will see he is a mini Mason Graham, 20 pounds lighter, but the exact same style of play. And he gets in and sheds blocks and tackles and gets the pressure. He's the same type of – I really like Walter Nolan quite a bit. And you got the receivers and tight end. I really like that group as well. I really hope we go for Rondale Moore. Quarterbacks, running backs, looks pretty solid. What do you guys think? Do you think we could trade Tyson Bagent at the trade deadline? I don't think we're retaining him next year. But I also think that our fans are higher on him than other fan bases. I don't think he's going to get a huge qualifying offer, and we can match any offer on restricted free agency. So if someone gives him $3 or $4 million, I think the Bears would sign that for a quality backup who knows our system, who's going to learn under Ben Johnson this year. It'll be interesting to see what happens there with Tyson Bagent. Our fans are really, really high on him, but realistically, he's not even the top backup quarterback in the league, but he's a good prospect. I like it. He can develop. There's the offensive line. I really like that offensive line as well. So I know it's not your superstars. It's not, but you've got a lot of guys to develop here. You look at the guys that are developing. I shouldn't have put a circle around Kerman Ahmedgadji because he wasn't drafted this year. So I apologize for that. He's retained. But these 3 draft picks are all high-value draft picks to me. You've retained some key guys, and you brought in some core free agents, and then you can recycle it next year because that salary cap is only going to go up again, and these contracts were mid-level, 1-year, 2-year, low-level contracts. You're going to have a lot of value in next year's free agency class too, and that's where the rubber meets the road on this concept because then as some of these guys hit, as you develop some of these free agents, as you get into this, that next year – Caleb Williams' 3rd year, this team has now developed, you have the ability to go take $80 million in cap space, which is what we'd probably be close to next year. And, we've got some key spots we've got to re-sign. We've got some key contracts coming up with Tyreek Stevenson, Kyler Gordon, some of those things. We'll have to see what they decide to do with those. But then you can go land. If you're close, if we make the playoffs, if we win a round or two, you're really close to going and signing that big free agent or making a trade for that big guy. To get that solidifying piece. That's where we would be next year. We're not quite there, so I like these mid-level contracts this year. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think that's the appropriate way to go for the Bears in free agency this year with the draft, with how we handle it? I just think there's such a huge opportunity. So hopefully you guys enjoy this mock draft, mid-level free agency, the options it gives to us, and how that could pan out. Man, if this happened, I would be very excited for this year and what it could offer for the Bears moving forward. So with that, enjoy your day. Da Bears, and bear down.